Have you ever experienced something so chilling that it stayed with you for years? In today's video, I'm sharing a true story from my childhood that still haunts me. Imagine seeing your little cousin talking to an invisible woman with braids, only to realize she's describing a terrifying scene of a woman hanging by her braids and gasping for air. What did she see that night, and why did it feel so real? Join me as we dive into the unsettling details of that eerie evening, the haunting image that lingered long after, and the unanswered questions that still keep me up at night. Was it just a child's imagination, or something far more sinister? You won't want to miss this spine-chilling tale. If you love real-life horror stories and mysteries that make you question reality, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss another terrifying story. Let's uncover the truth together. It was 5 years ago during the winter holidays when I visited my family in Los Angeles. This trip was an annual tradition, and I always looked forward to it. The warmth of my aunt's house, combined with the excitement of reuniting with relatives, made it a special time. The house was cozy, filled with festive decorations, and the aroma of holiday cooking always filled the air. The family gathered in the living room, where laughter and conversations mingled with the sound of holiday music playing softly in the background. My aunt and uncle chatted with my parents, catching up on the events of the past year. My cousins and I, spread out on the floor, played games and reminisced about our childhood antics. One of my favorite parts of these visits was spending time with my little cousin, April. At 4 years old, she was a bundle of energy and curiosity. Her playful nature and infectious laughter could brighten anyone's day. She had a knack for making everyone around her smile. April loved to play pretend and often came up with imaginative games. Whether it was dressing up as a princess or pretending to be a superhero, she always brought a sense of fun and adventure to our gatherings. Her vivid imagination made her the star of every family get-together. On this particular evening, after a long day of festivities, I decided to head upstairs to use the bathroom. As I reached the staircase on the second floor, I saw April sitting on one of the steps. She was making funny faces, scrunching up her nose and sticking out her tongue, completely engrossed in her own little world. Hey April, what are you doing?" I asked, smiling at her antics. She looked up at me with a mischievous grin. "I'm copying the lady with the braid," as she said, her voice full of excitement. I glanced around, but there was no one else in sight. What lady?" I asked, puzzled by her comment. April pointed to a wooden beam that ran parallel to the staircase. The lady up there," as she said. She's making faces." I felt a small shiver run down my spine but quickly brushed it off. April had a vivid imagination, and I figured she was just playing one of her games. I smiled at her and continued up the stairs, ready to finish my business and get back to the party. As I made my way up the stairs, I couldn't help but glance back at April. She was still sitting there, diligently making faces as if imitating someone. Her little eyebrows furrowed in concentration, and she puffed out her cheeks, doing her best to replicate whatever she thought she was seeing. April, where's the lady now?" I asked, half playing along with her game. She pointed again to the same beam. Right there," as she said, without a hint of hesitation. I looked where she was pointing but saw nothing but the wooden beam. "And what is she doing?" I inquired, my curiosity piqued despite myself. She's making faces," April repeated, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. After spending the entire day amidst the hustle and bustle of family celebrations, I decided to head up to the second floor of my aunt's house to use the bathroom. I climbed the stairs slowly, savoring the brief moment of peace. As I reached the second floor, I saw April sitting on the steps. She was completely absorbed, making funny faces. Her little forehead was furrowed, her eyes wide, and her tongue sticking out. I couldn't help but smile at the sight of her so engrossed in her play. April always had a way of bringing light and joy, no matter where she was. Hey April, what are you doing?" I asked, still smiling. She looked up at me with a mischievous glint in her eyes and a huge grin. "I'm copying the lady with the braid," as she said, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. I was intrigued. I glanced around, but saw no one else. What lady?" I asked, trying to understand what she meant. April pointed to a wooden beam that ran parallel to the staircase. The lady up there," she said. She's making faces." A slight shiver ran down my spine. I looked again at the beam but saw nothing but the old wood. "And what else is the lady doing?" I asked, trying to play along with her game. April continued making her faces, seemingly imitating someone who was having a lot of fun. She puffed out her cheeks and rolled her eyes, trying to replicate every detail of the supposed lady's expression. "She's making faces, just like me," as she explained. I laughed and shook my head. "You have an amazing imagination, you know that?" I said, still thinking it was just a child's game. I continued up the stairs, thinking about how wonderful it was to see April so happy and carefree. As I reached the top of the stairs, I glanced back at April. She was still there, sitting on the step, diligently making faces. There was something captivating about her concentration and the way she took her play so seriously. Even so, the idea of a lady with a braid left me feeling a bit unsettled. April, where's the lady now?" I asked again, more out of curiosity than concern. She pointed to the beam once more. "Right there. She's still making faces," as she said without hesitation. I stood there for a moment, looking at where she was pointing. The beam seemed so ordinary, so harmless. Yet, April's words echoed in my mind. Something about the way she spoke was strangely convincing. "All right, keep having fun," I said to her, trying not to show the slight unease that was beginning to grow inside me. I headed to the bathroom, but the feeling that there was more to April's story wouldn't leave me. After using the bathroom, I walked back down the hallway, passing by April again. She was still there, making her faces with the same dedication as before. I took one last look at the beam before heading down the stairs, trying to see what she saw. But all I found was the empty, old wood. As I descended the stairs, I couldn't shake the thought of the lady with the braid and what April was really seeing. Children's imaginations were powerful, but something about this felt different. And though I tried to ignore it, the unease lingered, haunting my thoughts. As I stood there on the stairs, I took a moment to look around. The hallway was empty, and there was no one else on the stairs except April and me. The house was quiet, with only the distant sounds of my family chatting and laughing downstairs. April, where's the lady now?" I asked again, trying to keep my voice casual. She didn't hesitate. She pointed directly at a wooden beam that ran parallel to the staircase. Right there," as she said confidently. She's still making faces." A chill ran down my spine. I looked at the beam again, straining my eyes to see what she saw. But there was nothing there, just the old wooden beam that had been part of the house for as long as I could remember. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling. It had to be her imagination. April was a creative and playful child, always coming up with imaginary friends and games. This was probably just another one of her inventions. "Are you sure you see her, April?" I asked, my curiosity piqued despite myself. April nodded vigorously. "Yes, she's right there," as she insisted, her eyes wide and serious. I took a deep breath and forced a smile. "Okay, well, you keep playing with the lady," I said, trying to sound lighthearted. "I'm going to the bathroom." April returned to making faces, completely absorbed in her game. I continued up the stairs, but the chill remained. I couldn't help but glance back at her, sitting there on the steps, mimicking someone I couldn't see. When I reached the top of the stairs, I looked down the hallway again, just to make sure. The hallway was still empty, and there was no sign of anyone else. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. It was just April's imagination, I told myself. There was nothing to worry about. As I walked down the hallway to the bathroom, I tried to push the strange encounter out of my mind. I focused on the familiar surroundings, the pictures on the walls, and the cozy feel of my aunt's house. This was a place of warmth and safety, not of ghosts or unseen presences. But even as I tried to dismiss it, the image of April pointing to the beam and insisting that the lady was there stayed with me. It was so vivid, so real to her. I couldn't help but wonder what she was seeing and why it seemed so clear to her. After using the bathroom, I started back down the hallway. The house was still quiet, and everything seemed normal. But as I approached the stairs, I felt that same chill again. April was still sitting on the steps, still making faces at the invisible lady. I paused for a moment, watching her. She was so focused, so serious about her game. It made me uneasy, but I didn't want to scare her or make her feel like she was doing something wrong. "April, are you okay?" I asked gently as I reached the top of the stairs. She looked up at me and nodded. "Yeah, I'm okay," as she said cheerfully. "The lady is still here." I forced another smile. Good," I said. Just make sure you come down soon, okay?" She nodded again, her attention already back on her invisible friend. I made my way down the stairs, trying to shake off the lingering sense of unease. But as I rejoined my family, the memory of April and the unseen presence stayed with me, a haunting reminder that some things are beyond explanation. Just as I was about to reach the top of the stairs, April said something that made me stop in my tracks. Her voice was clear and calm, but the words sent a chill down my spine. "Her braids are around her neck," as she said. I turned back slowly, my heart pounding. What did you say, April?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. April looked up at me with wide, innocent eyes. "The lady's braids are around her neck," as she repeated. "She's hanging by them and making faces." A wave of fear washed over me as I tried to process what she was saying. I looked again at the beam where she was pointing, but saw nothing. My mind raced with thoughts of what April might be seeing, something invisible to me but so real to her. "April, are you sure?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. What do you mean she's hanging by her braids?" April nodded, her expression serious. "She's hanging by her braids from the beam. That's why she's making faces like this." She contorted her face into an expression that looked like someone gasping for air, her little cheeks puffed out and her eyes wide. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. The way April described it, the detail in her expressions, it was too vivid, too specific to be just a child's imagination. I didn't know what to think, but I knew I couldn't ignore it. "April, can you come downstairs with me?" I asked, trying to sound calm and reassuring. Let's go join the others." She shook her head. "No, I want to stay and watch the lady," as she insisted, still mimicking the faces. Please, April," I urged, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "It's time to come downstairs." April looked at me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of confusion in her eyes. But then she nodded and stood up, taking my hand. "Okay," as she said quietly. As we walked down the stairs together, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me. What had April seen? And why had she described it in such a disturbing way? The image of a woman hanging by her braids from the beam haunted my thoughts. When we reached the bottom of the stairs, I tried to act normal, not wanting to alarm the rest of the family. But inside, I was shaken. I needed to talk to someone about what had just happened, to try and make sense of it. I led April back to the living room where the rest of the family was still gathered. She quickly returned to her playful self, joining the other kids in their games. I, on the other hand, couldn't shake the unease that had taken hold of me. As the evening went on, I kept glancing at April, watching her interact with the others. She seemed perfectly fine, as if nothing unusual had happened. But the words she had spoken, the image she had described, stayed with me. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, but the silence only made my thoughts louder. I replayed the events of the day in my mind, trying to find a logical explanation for what April had seen. But no matter how much I tried, I couldn't come up with a satisfactory answer. The idea that there was something more to April's vision, something real and frightening, gnawed at me. And as I finally drifted off to sleep, I knew that the memory of that day would stay with me for a long time. April pointed again, her little finger directed at the same spot on the beam. The lady is hanging by her braid and making faces, as she said with the same calmness that sent chills down my spine. I watched as April's expression changed, her eyes wide and her mouth open in a grimace that looked like someone struggling to breathe. She puffed out her cheeks and bulged her eyes, her tiny face contorting in a way that mimicked someone gasping for air. It was a haunting image, made even more disturbing by her innocent demeanor. A sense of dread filled me. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt cold all over. This wasn't just a child's playful imagination, it felt too real, too specific. The way April described the woman and her actions, it was like she was seeing something I couldn't. April, I said, my voice shaking, how does the lady look right now? She kept making the faces, her eyes never leaving the beam. Is she still hanging and making faces? She replied. Her braids are tight around her neck. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat. I didn't know what to do or say. It felt like I was stuck in a bad dream, one where reality and imagination were blurring together in the most terrifying way. Please, April, let's go downstairs, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We need to tell someone about this. She looked at me, her expression softening. But I want to watch her, she said, almost pleadingly. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. We need to go downstairs now, I insisted, gently but firmly. It's important. April hesitated, but eventually nodded. She stood up and took my hand, and together we walked down the stairs. My mind was racing, trying to understand what she had seen and why it felt so real to her. When we reached the living room, I pulled my aunt aside and told her what had happened. Her face grew pale as I described April's words and actions. We need to keep an eye on her, my aunt said, clearly shaken. Something's not right. For the rest of the evening, I couldn't stop thinking about the haunting image April had described. The thought of a woman hanging by her braids, struggling to breathe, replayed over and over in my mind. It was a picture that wouldn't leave me, no matter how hard I tried to push it away. That night, as I lay in bed, I kept hearing April's voice and seeing her contorted face. The unease lingered, making it hard to fall asleep. I wondered if I would ever be able to forget what she had described, or if it would haunt me forever. In the days that followed, I watched April closely. She seemed perfectly fine, as if the incident had never happened. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that we had glimpsed something beyond our understanding. The image of the woman hanging by her braid stayed with me, a haunting reminder of that unsettling evening. It was a mystery that I couldn't solve, a piece of the past that refused to be forgotten. And as time went on, the memory remained, a chilling reminder of the unknown. Even now, years later, I still think about that night at my aunt's house. The image of the lady with the braid haunts me, and I can't shake the eerie feeling it left behind. April's description was so vivid, so specific, that it felt more real than any childhood fantasy should. Whenever I visit my aunt's house, I can't help but glance at that beam, half expecting to see something out of the ordinary. It's just a piece of old wood, but in my mind, it's forever connected to that chilling evening and the mysterious woman April saw hanging by her braids. The memory of April's contorted face, mimicking someone gasping for air, still sends shivers down my spine. It was more than just a game to her, it felt like she was witnessing something I couldn't see. The thought of it keeps me awake some nights, wondering what she really saw and why it appeared to her. I've tried to rationalize it, telling myself it was just a figment of her imagination. But deep down, I can't shake the feeling that there was something more to it. Children have a way of seeing things that adults can't, and I can't help but wonder if April glimpsed a piece of a hidden world that night. The unanswered questions linger in my mind. Who was the lady with the braid? Why was she there, and why did April see her? Was it a ghost, a spirit trapped in that house, or just a vivid figment of a child's imagination. The lack of answers makes it all the more unsettling. I've spoken to my aunt about it a few times since then. She remembers the night well and has also felt uneasy about it. We've tried to find some history about the house, looking for any clues that might explain April's vision, but we found nothing. The mystery remains, an unsolved piece of our family's past. April doesn't remember much about that night. When I asked her about it years later, she just shrugged and said she was probably just playing. But I remember the seriousness in her eyes, the way she insisted the lady was there. It's hard to dismiss that kind of conviction. The fear I felt that night has faded over time, but it hasn't disappeared completely. It's become a part of me, a reminder that some things in this world can't be easily explained. I've learned to live with the uncertainty, but the memory still lingers, casting a shadow over my sense of reality. Every now and then, I catch myself thinking about the woman with the braid, wondering if she's still there, unseen but ever present. It's a thought that brings both fear and fascination, a reminder of the thin veil between the known and the unknown. As the years go by, I've come to accept that I might never find the answers I'm looking for. Some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, their secrets hidden in the shadows of our memories. The experience has taught me to appreciate the unknown, to respect the mysteries that life presents. In the end, the lady with the braid is a part of my story, a chilling chapter that I'll never forget. It's a reminder that the world is full of wonders and terrors, often just beyond our perception. And as much as it haunts me, it also intrigues me, keeping me ever curious about the mysteries that lie hidden in the corners of our lives. The unanswered questions remain, a testament to the strange and unexplained. Who was she, and why did April see her? It's a mystery that I carry with me, a lingering fear that keeps me wondering about the hidden truths of our world.